Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our HIRE20 Virtual Conference. And today we have a panel discussion, and we'll be looking at the events industry and how it's been affected by COVID-19. So thank you for joining us. I'll introduce our panelists in a second. However, listen, obviously the events industry has been absolutely very heavily hit, decimated. For the National Office, of course, we had to cancel HIRE20, and so we've been working over the past few weeks in the background to put on this virtual conference. In putting on this virtual conference, we still do want to acknowledge our HIRE20 sponsors who did get behind us when we're looking to do a physical exhibition and conference, and they've been supportive of us moving this into a virtual mode. The other thing that I'd like to say as well is that we're really looking forward to working with our sponsors, exhibitors and members to hopefully see everyone for HIRE21 in the Gold Coast. For those of you that are paying attention to the social media channels and your inboxes, you may have seen the announcement for HIRE21 returning to the Gold Coast. So we're really hopeful that we can welcome everyone back and have a fantastic catch up next year. So today on the panel, we have three people from the association. In no particular order, we have Erin Johnston, who's the owner of South Coast Party Hire. So South Coast Party Hire is based in the southern Greater Sydney region and is a single branch business and is focused in the events and party hire. Erin is also our events division president and has been really active in the events work group that we've been running for the past few months. Secondly, we have Brett O'Hara, who is the operations manager with HRIA, obviously one of Australia's preeminent exhibition and event companies, and Harry brings a wealth of insights into what's happening within this space. And finally, but certainly not any less prestigious, we have Mr. Mark Burton from Barossa Valley Hire. And Mark has a general equipment hire business as well as an event side to his business. So we're really fortunate to have these guys joining us. There is, I guess, a breadth of knowledge. They all have different sorts of businesses, and hopefully this is reflective of the people that we have joining us on this webinar. And we look forward to having some good, robust discussion with our panelists. So thank you for joining us, guys. Just in terms of what's been happening in the National Office. So when this first happened, we went into lockdown. One of the first things that we did at the association level was to immediately hit the phones and start calling all of our members. And unashamedly, at the top of the list, we started calling all of our events members first. And yeah, there was some really sort of tough discussions that were had. More than anything, we want to reach out and say that the association is here and we want to hear what the problems are. And in developing this panel and the other HIRE20 webinars that we'll be running, the focus is really around supporting our members, giving them the tools to help them weather this storm, and also giving them the tools to best position their businesses to accelerate out of this storm when the conditions allow us to do so. It's our number one focus right now. Some of the things that we've been doing with the events division in particular, there's been a lot of lobbying work that's happening behind the scenes. You would have seen some notes coming from James around what's been happening. So James is personally involved with all of the lobbying activities. Some of the things we're doing is we're working both independently to lobby all levels of government, but we're also joined a number of consortiums. So we're working with the Business Events Council of Australia. Some of you may have seen a film clip from Channel 10 a few days back, where it was the CEO of the MEA, the Meetings and Events Association, who's also a member of that consortium, really sort of highlighting some of the issues that the events industry is facing in terms of being overlooked in terms of rescue packages. So yeah, we've been working strongly with BECA. We've also joined the Council of Small Business Organisations Australia, who have a lot of depth in terms of being able to lobby state and federal politicians. And we have seen, just as part of the other activities, that there's a separate small business grant that they're doing independently as well. So we encourage our members to look into that. We've also put out a number of polls to all of our attendees asking what you'd like us to focus on. Overwhelmingly, lobbying is top of the list. Some of the other things that are coming up is JobKeeper. What happens? It's here now, and what happens when it ends, and what are the dangers? So we will be addressing that within this panel discussion as well. So please keep an ear out for that. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We have enabled a Q&A function. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you have the ability to ask your own questions. Based on time, we'll try to sort of fit some of those questions in. If we run out of time, we will get back in contact with you and attempt to provide you with an answer. I also would encourage you, if you have a question which is probably a little bit more maybe sensitive in nature or confidential, you can still reach out to the National Office, and indeed we can put you in touch with any of the panellists that are participating today. The other thing is that we have enabled a chat function, so you can send messages between yourselves in the group and also us as the moderators and panellists. If you're having issues in terms of hearing or seeing the webinar, just please post something up so we can see that. And we have the wonderful Sally and Linda in the background pushing buttons to keep this running smoothly. So thank you, Sally and Linda. The last thing I'll mention is that this webinar is being recorded, and it will be available in the coming days to any of our members free of charge. So if there's some points that you sort of missed that you'd like to revisit, please go to the member section of the website when we post it, and also encourage your colleagues to go and have a look as well. So thank you everyone. We'll get started now, and we'll sort of pose our first questions to the panels, and we'll see how we go. Okay, so Mark, Erin and Brett, thank you for making yourselves available. And I guess the first question for you guys is just to check in with you, and just from a general perspective, from a psychological perspective, keen to hear how you guys are going, how you're feeling, and how your teams are going during this crisis.
It's tough. It's been really tough. I've been in the industry 35 years, and it's the toughest thing that we've ever faced here. I started Harry's and there were 6 people. At the start of March, we had 1,000 employees, and now we're back to 50. So, yeah, it's really hard dealing with people who you've known, 25, 30 years, who have worked here, who are, now either on JobKeeper or not with us, or have got other work. We're keeping in contact with all the staff as much as we can. But yeah, personally, it's tough, but it's really good talking to people in the industry. We're all in the same boat. So Erin and I have a fair bit of dialogue as I'm poor Erin's mentor with the HIRE Regional program. So we sort of kept in contact fairly regularly at the start of it all, just on what we were going through, and I spoke to Erin a fair bit, and then other people we know in the industry, people like Jeff Tucker and Steve Palmer and I had a chat the other day. Gary Pask and I. So yeah, it's good talking to other people because you're not the only one. But look, in the last couple of weeks, we've started to have a couple of staff come back in 1 or 2 days a week, which is really good. But yeah, it's emotionally, it's really tough days, and then really, really good days. So the last couple of weeks has sort of settled down, and it hasn't been too bad. But yeah, the first couple of weeks were just horrendous. I mean, you couldn't imagine in your wildest dreams that it would just turn off. The tap just turned off overnight. Our income stopped and the work stopped. So,
just to provide this insight as well, just before it really sort of hit, Gab, who's the CEO of Harry the Hire, was up in Sydney for a CEO's dinner. And so myself and James and a number of other sort of hire and events-based CEOs were in the room having a catch-up, and Gab was the first one to flag it and say, this is pretty serious, guys. It's going to be a really bumpy ride, and we don't know how long it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, we started to see it from our some big overseas organisers that we do exhibitions and conferences for, and we started to get phone calls that they were looking like they may cancel, which for us, you know, you sort of thought, oh, well, you know, a job here or a job there, but then it just grew momentum, and daily there was more and more. And then in the end, the guys from our Sydney office rang me and said, look, can you just ring James and see if the HIRE Rental Conference is still going ahead? Because, you know, we're getting a lot of conferences cancel and exhibitions. So I rang James, and I think James thought I was from another planet when I rang him. You know, it was just aware of what was going on, or sort of the momentum. And I think there was a board meeting in the next couple of days, and then
correct.
Back and said, look, we've been in contact with the venue, and we'll let you know. We'll make a decision. But it evolved really quickly. It was unbelievable how fast it it grew. And then for us, once they cancelled the Grand Prix on the Friday morning, then all the other events then just
dominoed.
Just toppled like a house of cards.
Yeah. And Erin, you've got I guess a different business, but you, as Brett mentioned, you guys have been in contact. You know, how have you guys been traveling?
Yeah, look, I think from our perspective, like, you know, Harry's do a lot of large events. You know, our main market is weddings. We're a tourism-based area, so you know, that really took a hold in that third week of March, I think, when, you know, weddings were tipped as one of the biggest spreaders. Hopefully we'll recover from that. I think, you know, it really was like you were in a dream, and I mean more of a nightmare, really. Like, it just, like Brett said, it just collapsed like a house of cards. And, you know, we had full books, and then one day and the next day we had nothing. So I think, like, there's nothing that prepares you for that. I think you just have to, like Brett said, lean on other people. I don't know, you know, Nathan and I own this business together, my husband, so we had each other, which, like, you know, that in itself is an excellent support system. But having that outside anchor in Brett really helped to steer us into, you know, not necessarily making wholly emotional decisions, which, because we were in such an emotional place, we were hell-bent on making emotional driven decisions, and not using our heads. So having that is probably been the biggest saviour for our business, I think, is having someone. And that's, I think, when you ask how people are, I think that's no one's doing well. And I think the reality is the way that you survive is that you learn to lean on people. And for people like me, who I've never been one for asking for help, it's not my strong suit. I can honestly say, like, it does. It just makes you feel like you're just less alone. So anyone that, you know, is out there that doesn't have someone to talk to really does need to make sure that they reach out to the association and ask for a suitable mentor. Like, you know, I'm sure there's people out there with a fair bit of time on their hands at the moment who can share war stories. So
it's interesting that, you know, from the association's perspective, obviously we run a number of mentoring programs for women in HIRE and also young professionals, and we do sort of talk about the mentoring role and what a valuable part of the program it is. And sometimes it's hard to, you know, communicate effectively what value that provides. And in good times, you know, it's probably easy enough to say, you know, my mentor helped me make great decisions to propagate my career. But we're in a unique time now where having an external contact, be it a mentor or a colleague or even a competitor who's external from your company, and sharing ideas, there's probably a lot of value in having that connection.
Yeah, definitely.
And Mark, obviously, you've got a different business again, a strong family business, but a little bit different to everyone else on the panel.
Yeah. So, you know, I really feel for the poor people who's got just a event business. You know, we're a bit fortunate where we've actually got a general equipment hire and also an access hire business. So we lost a third of our business sort of overnight as well, which is, you know, fair whack for our size company, but we still were getting an income in, so we could, from our other businesses. So we could keep the doors open, and we kept 90% of our staff could still stay on the books, and we just moved them to other areas. We're also a bit fortunate where once it all started to happen, we managed to to get in touch with a lot of the bigger companies, and we built a few temporary lunchroom facilities, and our toilet hire section of our business went through the roof because of the the distancing and everything. So we managed to get basically 100% utilisation on our toilets. So we're just blessed in one sense that we do have some other arms of the hire game that we could fall back on to keep things running, which was beneficial for us.
Yeah, and we were chatting the other day, Mark, and obviously I mentioned previously that the association started calling out to all of its members, and we called all the event members first, actually. But no, Mark, you've been sort of reaching out to some of the members yourself personally as well, and keen to hear how that's been going. Yeah.
So I just randomly would pick a number, and it didn't have to be in South Australia; it was interstate as well, and just give them a call. And my main concern was just to say, look, hello, how are you? How are you? How are your family? How's things going? It's not really, I know all the businesses are hurting lots, but it was more so connecting with the people just to see how they were coping with this. And I suppose the important thing, and it was harder, and I found it hard too with us once you're all sort of isolated and you couldn't get out and you couldn't go and catch up with your mates on a Friday night and just sit down and have a quiet beer and discuss it. So to make sure we all stay connected with each other, and we tried to, where possible, reach out to as many people as we could and just check on them, and seeing how they were and letting them know there are avenues out there for people to get in touch with everybody and just stay connected and stay safe. And I know it's hard to believe that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we need to try and stay positive where possible, and hopefully we all come out the other end of this a little bit wiser and a bit better geared up for. We hope it never happens again, but if it does, we sort of got some plans in place to sort of cover ourselves a bit better.
Yeah, and certainly resilience is one of those things that is going to be built up over this time. But let's make no bones about it. It's an awful time to still go through that process. Yeah, and I guess I'm hearing this consistency from each of you around times are tough, and there's that real value in having relationships. Leaning on your personal relationships, leaning on your professional relationships, leaning on your industry relationships. There's real value in that. So great insight. And I think some of you've touched on this a little bit already as well. But in terms of business lost, is there a rough figure or a proportion of business that you've lost when the lockdown was announced?
Well, for us, as I said earlier, because we sort of have other divisions of the hire game, we basically lost a third. So it was sort of overnight. It was almost like watching the stock exchange. Our diary, there's that many cross-offs. So we had lots of jobs booked in. We did lots of work, big corporate stuff with hotels and wineries, and all that was just gone in an instant. So it was pretty mind-boggling there for a while. So we've lost a third of our income. We can see a little bit of the few bookings we managed to reschedule, but out of that, I would probably say maybe 10-15% at the very most we'll probably be able to get back this year, but the rest of it's gone.
Yeah, understood. And I know Erin and Brett that obviously you guys have got different figures, and it sounds a little bit more harsh than what Mark has experienced.
I think for us it was from when weddings couldn't happen anymore, we lost 100% of our business. We didn't manage to secure any sort of tenders for any sort of work that was coming out of the COVID type crisis. So for us, looking down the barrel of no work for at least from when everything happened for at least five or so months. I think even, we're all a bit quiet during winter, and we all sort of know that, but the deposits still roll in for future work. That pretty much all halted as well. So where we're all used to a bit of downtime in the events side of the hire industry. I think for us, we're not used to operating on zero income. We still, we quieten down and we don't have a lot of work. But we still have money coming in the door for jobs for the next season, and that confidence with the consumer was just completely gone. Not only because of the fact that people couldn't have events at this particular point in time, but they didn't know when they could. And also a lot of our clients have lost their jobs, like themselves. So we had a lot of all the postponements and cancellations for the season that we're in right now. But for next season, we've also had a lot of people postpone or cancel because they've lost their jobs and they just literally won't be able to pay for their wedding when it comes around. So it's a bit of a domino effect, and because we still don't have any sort of clarity on, most other industries seem to have a plan of when they're going to be able to come back online. There just doesn't seem to be an accurate plan for the events industry. Means that until there is, the customers just have no confidence to even continue to look to the future to book their events, where we can start to build some revenue in the quiet time. So pretty quiet.
And obviously, Brett, you mentioned from a staffing perspective, you just cut right back, and I imagine that's in line with your business needs as well. Yeah,
for us, I mean, you look at it, it's a 98% income reduction. Really, it's 100%, but we've picked up a little bit of work with some COVID testing stations. And our production audio department is doing some work with streaming conferencing and live broadcasts of music that's going on weekends. So, there's a tiny little bit of income with that. But, really, it's a 100%. Just stop. There's no income. There's nothing.
And I think, so Erin, you mentioned that typically you'd be taking deposits in during that, the quiet period of the season. And obviously there's been all the cancellations that have happened. I'm keen to hear from the panel how you guys are handling cancellations. Is it going towards postponement, or how are you sort of talking to people that are cancelling to perhaps try and secure the business, when it may become available in the future?
For us, we dipped our toe in the water with this kind of a situation with the bushfires earlier this year on the South Coast. And at that point, it was a very emotional time for a lot of people. And we had a lot of cancellations because of the bushfires, and we did probably make an emotional decision to refund a lot of our clients at that point. Looking back, that probably wasn't the best business decision that we made. And when this rolled around and started and we could see what was going to happen, we made a swift decision that we had to stand by our terms and conditions. Obviously, there's a sort of an emotional aspect to every story that you hear from people. But there's also, for us, we had employees and all the rest of it. So we basically were offering no penalty postponements to all of our clients. And that probably for us was over 200, maybe 300 individual jobs for that period that was affected. I would say 98% of our clients postponed. A lot of them are looking down the barrel of another postponement because they postponed to later this year, and it's still not looking great. But I just think we were just so blessed to have our clients not demand refunds, because to have been, pushed up against a wall by hundreds of people to have their money back would have been emotionally distressing in a time where we were watching our business crumble around us. So we were, without much sort of, negotiation, most of our clients were just so happy to just postpone, even without a forward date, their deposit on hold. So they could see how much our industry was affected, and unless they needed the money themselves because they had lost their job or something, we took it on a case-by-case basis on those instances. But like I said, we did very few refunds. And
I'm curious as well, but perhaps more so for Mark and yourself, Erin, that is there an element that you're part of a business community, like you're part of a local community, and you're working with a lot of sort of events that are based around your area? Was there a sense of some loyalty, or was it?
For For us, most of our clients actually aren't local because we are a tourism-based, like,
okay, yeah.
You know, a lot of our clients who are getting married on the South Coast aren't necessarily from the South Coast.
Yeah.
I mean, I would put a lot of it down to, I guess, the relationship the value that we put on the relationship that we build with our clients from the outset. Before all of this, before we knew any of this was going to happen, we don't treat them like a number. We treat them like a person. You know, we are invested in being a part of their journey. And I think because of that, when this rolled around, they had a personal, I guess, investment in our business, and they didn't want to hurt us. They wanted to support us. And I think you can't create that feeling that people have without putting that effort in at the beginning. And we have always done that regardless, and we always will. But I think that had a real impact on the way, the initial reaction that people had when they were looking down the barrel of a postponement. And that honestly was, with a lot of vendors on the South Coast, experienced a really similar response from clients. Obviously, one here and there, but we dealt with those ones and moved on. But yeah, like I said, majority were very happy to postpone. So
yeah, we're very similar to Erin as well. You obviously have to take it on an individual case and have a look at it, but I suppose for us, we probably managed percentage-wise maybe retaining 20% that we could offer different dates. We offered everyone that we were happy to extend the date out to whenever, and we would retain the same costings, our same pricing structure as what it is current. There were a number of people that wanted their money back, so we were understanding, and I think in a small community had to be a little bit careful. So we actually made sure that we gave them that opportunity that if they wanted a full refund, we would do that. And when we could keep deposits, we would, obviously took that opportunity to try and keep a bit of cash flow on hand. But definitely a juggling act, and you never know from day to day whether you're doing the right thing for yourself, or the right thing for the customer, and how to even it out so that so both parties were happy and everyone walked out of there satisfied.
And it seems to me that a key part of those discussions is the strength of relationship that you've built as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and so in terms of staff that no longer required, what have you guys been doing in terms of stand down versus utilising JobKeeper? What happens with casual staff? From a staffing perspective, what's happened with you guys?
From our point of view, from the Grand Prix weekend, we had about 240 casual staff, so we just stopped giving them shifts, just rang them and said, look, with what's going on, we have no work for you. So that was those, and then we had about 740 full-time employees. Look, JobKeeper has been fantastic, and is certainly helping pay the wages for the staff that are here. But we don't have 750 people on JobKeeper because the on-costs with JobKeeper are enormous, and if they're on for 6 months, with annual leave, accruing long service leave, and all the on-costs with JobKeeper. So we're down to about 200 staff. There's 50 in a core group, and we're sort of in 4 days a week, but we're all on JobKeeper.
Yeah.
Okay. I've lost everyone. We're all on JobKeeper and, some annual leave and a little bit of pay. And then we have some staff who are in 1 or 2 days a week. Yeah.
Sorry, Erin, I think I sort of start to...
Comparing with what Brett was saying, and I think, JobKeeper, on the surface appears to be a great tool, and it does exactly what they say it does. It I guess preserves the relationship between the employer and the employee, but the reality is that is with a hope that at the end of this there will be a requirement for that employee to be gainfully employed with that business. And I think for a lot of our businesses, we won't need the level of staffing that we had prior to this. So from a business perspective, there is no right way to keep them on the books and continue to pay those on costs that Brett mentioned. If come the end of JobKeeper, you're going to have to let them go anyway.
And in the meantime, the accruals are built up for that 6 month period.
while you make no money. You know, that money has to come from somewhere. So like I said, on the surface, it's a great program. It really is. But we are down to only what we feel that we will need beyond this. That we've invested a very large amount of time in training the people that are the future of our business. And beyond that, we had to make some hard decisions to actually let people go because, the on costs during a time where we're just making no revenue didn't make any sense.
So it sort of sounds to me as though one of the tough exercises you had to undertake was what will our business look like coming out the other side? What's our staffing requirement going to be? Who do we keep on board and how much do we utilise JobKeeper, knowing that provides some upfront cash flow to support the business, but there's that hidden ongoing cost which will build up over time.
Exactly. And like we're spending this downtime with our core group that we've retained on building up and refining all of our training systems so that when we do come back on board and we, when we are ready to recruit again, we'll have a robust system that we're able to train those new employees through. Obviously, anyone who we let go, we would be giving them an opportunity to come back if they weren't employed again by a business. But it's likely that we'll have to start from scratch. So, yeah.
And Brett, from your perspective, obviously you've let a lot of staff go. And I think you sort of mentioned you're also taking the opportunity to do a lot of tidying up around the business, both physically and from a business operations perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're sort of thinking, who knows? It's a guess at the moment, but we're thinking, maybe the business next financial year might be 20% of what it was last year. So, we're not going to need the staffing levels, but we're not going to need the stock levels of equipment. It may be 4 or 5 years before we're all back to where we were in, summer of 2019. And those levels, that's our best guess with the way that the events are heading. So, stock, we're going through all of our stock. Anything that is probably not going to get used, then we're just getting rid of it. Mainly furniture and those sorts of things that date, structure and flooring. You can sort of pack it up and put it aside, which is what we're doing. So, we're going through our complete inventory. And we're just working through factory by factory, getting rid of all the stuff we're not needing. So it's all either going to auction houses or going to the tip and get rid of it all, clear all the warehouse space that we didn't have warehouse space and we're running out. Now we've got plenty of warehouse space. So and just a big tidy up. And we want to have that done by the end of financial year. Then we can sort of say, okay, let's reset, and then we're ready to go, as Erin mentioned earlier, with training, websites, processes, all those sorts of things that you never get around to do when you are so busy, when you're as busy as what we all have been. You're just dealing with the day-to-day. If there's anything good that's come out of it, it's a chance to sort of take a step back and look at what we do. We do some things really well, and some things we don't do so well. So we have a look at it, work out how we can do it better, go through training, as Erin said, with our people, bring on some systems, and then as the numbers start to build up and as we get people back, get them all on board, the gear's all clean, it's been checked and it's ready for hire, and then we can, do what we do best and go and deliver jobs, knowing that everything's as good as it can be. But, and that's also, it's been good for the staff, a little bit of positivity rather than sort of moping around the factory. We've all got a purpose and, whiteboards with jobs to do and lists to do and, we're doing social distancing, so small groups of people, different times for lunch breaks. So, it's not like the lunchrooms have huge numbers in and we don't have massive numbers of people in every day. But just, what else do you do? Just got to be positive and plan for the future.
Yeah, and you make an interesting point there. One of the key takeouts from the webinar that we ran earlier in the day around leading through this difficult time was to reevaluate tasks and performance measures, for want of a better word, and reset them but also still, report on them and enable people to work through those, achieve those targets, achieve those tasks. So there's still an element of getting the job done and contributing to the business, but being realistic and authentic about, what the tasks are and what the goals are and what the KPIs are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And Mark, for yourself, some tidying up around your premises?
Yeah. So again, our warehouse never looked so clean, mate. I didn't realise we had so much stuff stacked up. That's all. And we're making stillages and we're just tidying up things that you never get time to do.
Yeah.
A lot of our full-time staff have accumulated a lot of annual leave, and it's always been an issue when we've been so busy to give them some time off. So we are chewing through all our staff, and we're making sure we try and get them back to a maximum of 4 weeks accumulated leave up their sleeve, and the rest of it we're trying to get them to use it up.
Yeah.
So that's been good, and they've actually enjoyed doing that too, just to give them a bit of a break finally. It's just a shuffling of the pack. We move guys from different areas. So the guys that are normally in our function centre, and that's all they do all year round, are now working in our general equipment hire, or they're up in our access hire yard doing a bit of work up there. So they're actually enjoying a bit of variety in their job at the moment. So it hasn't been too bad for us.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm hearing as well is that, from everything in terms of using up annual leave time to, looking at offloading unneeded inventory prior to the end of the financial year, all these sorts of things, slimming down the operations and positioning yourselves so that, when social distancing is relaxed, you're in a good position to capitalize on that, and you won't be carrying too much weight in terms of coming out the other side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nice, spot on.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. So I think, Brett, you mentioned earlier on some of the small things you had been doing in terms of pivoting and some new lines of some small jobs that you had been doing around testing stations and things like that. So I'm keen to hear from yourself and any of the panelists around what opportunities you have uncovered to get some jobs through the books.
Yeah, look, we, when it all started, we've sort of got our sales managers and sort of the senior team together and just, brainstormed really. And people just sat around in a room and said, well, where are we going to get income from? What can we do? So it's amazing how, someone knows someone who knows someone who, works in the health department or whatever. So, but also using, things like LinkedIn and those sorts of platforms, trying to find out people in different positions. So, so every week, business development, just brainstorming meetings with people, and we would all sit in those meetings and all come up with different ideas, sort of get them up on a whiteboard, come up with a list, and then, everyone would get assigned a task, go off and try and find out who that person is. And then, then we just reached out to as many people as we could and just put things in place and, doing drawings and proposals and all those sorts of things. But at that really early stage, no one really knew what was happening or what was going to happen. But then as it evolved, we sort of put ourselves in a position where, we'd already given people some scenarios and some costings and ideas. And then, if they did need something, then they were straight on the phone and off we went. And then when it did happen, for the health department in Victoria, we would get a phone call at 10 o'clock at a midweek night. It would get confirmed, and at 7 a.m. the next morning we would have to build 8 COVID testing stations around Melbourne.
Yeah.
The teams, we would all be sort of by our phones waiting to find out which site we're off to. The trucks are all packed to see, and then they would ring and say, yeah, it's all on for tomorrow. And then we'd go off and build them, and, we had a 2-hour window to build them. But we used, the guys at Splashdown and the guys at Coolbury, so other suppliers, they sort of helped us out. We built those stations. We were all ready to go, and then they got cancelled for a day. So that was, then we were just, evolving, and just whatever we had to do, we'd do it, as quick as we could. And of that 50, of that core group of people, they were people who were multi-skilled and could do all sorts of things. So we were out building panels, installing lights, laying floors, just everything. But so that was over a week. So, we did that. And then our audio-visual people, they got in contact with different people in the industry, and that's where we picked up, things like Delivered Live is recorded here in Richmond, and every Saturday afternoon and Saturday night, and broadcast on YouTube. That's now been picked up by the Victorian government, where they're sort of paying for that for the next 10 weeks to help people in isolation with live music. So there's been artists in here, and then also now in our Sydney studio. So, it's just try and think of anything we could. We advertise, we've got 100 trucks. We we could use the trucks and the drivers with the transport industry. So there's a little bit of work with that, but not a lot. But just try and think of all these different revenue streams to get something ticking over. Brainstorming, it's amazing when you get all your staff in and say, right, what are we going to do? What ideas come up? And most of them, not necessarily from salespeople, it's from people outside of their comfort zone, but thought or they know someone. So
an opportunity to provide, it seems like an opportunity to innovate.
Absolutely.
By having those brainstorming sessions. And it also sounds to me as though, obviously, the HIRE was, a large organisation with national footprint, and all of a sudden you become extremely agile in terms of how you operate. You get a phone call and you have to pull the team together quickly and deliver something, turn around.
Yeah, and the team in Sydney the same. I mean, their numbers have been reduced significantly as well. No different to Melbourne, but that's right. Just be agile. Do what we can, and do it with a smile and move on, and let's see what tomorrow brings. Yeah,
and Erin, in terms of your business, there's been sort of sowing some seeds around future business or any sort of businesses, jobs you have unlocked.
Yeah, so for us, it really wasn't, there wasn't a lot on offer locally for us. So we didn't manage to secure anything additional. We delivered our first job since the end of March last week, and it was actually for a funeral. So, it's not a lot for our size businesses out there, I don't think. What we've been focusing on more is connecting with our clients and trying to still keep those lines of communication open for people that are planning, because people are still going to need our services somewhere down the line. So what we have been encouraging our clients to do is not to completely shut down and stop organising, but to just keep those lines of communication open. We're sitting here, we don't have a lot to do at the moment. So it's a perfect time for them to sort of, get as much as they can out of us information-wise and refine their orders, confirm their bookings for next season, that kind of thing. We've been offering, more flexible terms for people who are worried. So for those people who can afford to pay a deposit, we've been saying, look, these are some of the options that you've got. Rest assured that, if this is continuing 12 months down the track, which God help us all if it is, but you're not going to be penalised and you'll be able to postpone. So we've been more focused on, making sure that we don't miss out on that than chasing the local jobs around here, because there just doesn't seem to be a lot in our area. So
I understood. And I guess the key thing I'm hearing there as well is that innovation in terms of flexible pay arrangements or flexible planning, and just have a conversation with us, help us build a relationship with you, so that when you do want to activate, when you do want to have your event, you've already talked to us, you know exactly what you want, and it'll be
Often people are they don't like asking for that kind of thing. So if you you don't necessarily have to put it out there and say, we're not charging deposits, or we're not, giving reduced deposits or something like that, or just opening those lines of communication to say, just talk to us. If you have something that you need and you're unsure about, booking or moving forward, just talk to us and we can, come up with a plan that suits you. So we haven't put any specific policies in place. We're just doing it again on a case-by-case basis, but really keeping up that communication with our clients. So social media, emails, following up on our future bookings, other things, just so that people don't think we're just getting order, I guess. So.
Yeah. And I guess from a marketing perspective, you've mentioned the social media. I think Brett mentioned LinkedIn. Obviously, calling up all your suppliers. would you say that your marketing activities have ramped up a little bit during this time? And are you using more channels to reach out to potential new customers?
I think just like refining what works for our market, I think has been the biggest learning for us. Having the time to actually analyse what people respond to, what they enjoy, what content they enjoy seeing, what they respond to. That's been the biggest learning for us. I know, like, I've got a marketing background, but the amount of marketing that I was able to actually dedicate in time during our normal course of business before all this was just so small. Yeah. It's made me realise what is involved in I guess properly marketing your business, and it's not something that you can just sort of half-ass. You really need to commit to it. So we're spending a fair bit of time on getting our ducks in a row and making sure moving forward we have proper systems in place for keeping it up after we do get busy again.
Yeah. And Mark, similar for you, you're sort of reaching out to a lot of potential customers. Yeah.
Yeah, so for us, it was quite interesting when we reached out to the wine industry and offered them some temporary lunchroom facilities. None of them had any idea that you'd use a structure to do that sort of work in. So we picked up 6 or 8 structures, 10-metre structures, through different wineries and through the Adelaide Poultry in town as well, which has been great for us. It's just all come to an end because South Australia, they're starting to open up the restrictions a lot now. So, but we managed to have them up for 6 to 8 weeks, which was handy. But none of them had any idea that you could do that. So we're hoping that we can actually feed on that in the future too for other things that they perhaps haven't thought of. Where most people think structures for weddings or corporate stuff, but you can obviously use them for this type of work as well. So that was a bit of a saviour for us in our event side for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. So I'm just looking at the time. I'm mindful that we're working towards a 4:30 finish on this as well. One of the things that I heard in the news today was that, in terms of lockdowns, once the schools are sort of fully reopened and people are back, is that the government's approach is that they won't re-trigger full lockdowns, that it will be more locally based, in line with any sort of localized outbreaks that do happen. Do you think that provides some sort of glimmer of hope in terms of the path forward? And in general, how are you guys feeling about the coming 12 months, 24 months, that recovery period?
For us, that's an interesting question. I mean, we've got really nothing in our bookings at all into sort of November this year. So it's obviously a bit of a worry. I'm not sure, whether things will change on that. I mean, a lot of our work's also been around the music industry, so we do lots of concert work. So who knows when that sort of sector will get an opportunity to fire up again. So that's obviously a concern for us.
Yeah,
I think that the biggest thing here is although it seems quite dire, I guess you probably just need to sit tight. There's no benefit to rushing the opening up of everything at this point. From an events perspective, things aren't going to just happen instantly when they lift those restrictions. It takes time for these things to start coming back through. So I think, we all just need to sort of sit tight, have confidence that people are still going to need our services beyond all of this. We will return to a time where, like we were before, like Brett said, I think summer of 2019, but not to panic. And I think, don't chase jobs down like they're going out of fashion. Don't discount your product and have confidence in what you offer, because, consumers will use that desperation against us as an industry. And I think we need to hold tight on that and to really be firm on, as a collective, really make sure that we're not undervaluing and that we don't diminish the value of our product and our service to
That's a good comment.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we've seen in other industries, is that once discounting begins in earnest, that it sets a precedence, and the customer is no longer going to come back and want to pay what the benchmark pricing was, and it's a slippery race to the bottom of profitability if you go down that pathway.
Yep.
And it's a tough one because in the meantime everyone is hurting. And
I do understand. Yeah. I'm not saying don't fight for a job, but find a way to fight for it without bottoming out the market, because long term for our industry, that's just going to end up with more businesses shutting their doors if the margins just aren't there. So yeah.
And I think it's also, sorry, Brett, go.
No, I was going to say, and your costs aren't going to reduce. Your rent and your cost to operate your business, there's no reduction. I mean, there might be a short-term reduction, but once JobKeeper's over and it's going back on in December or whatever, the cost to run your business is still the same. So all you're doing is just getting rid of your profit margin, when really you're going to need that money, for new stock and all sorts of things, or to get staff wages back up where you need them or where you want them to be. Otherwise, you will lose them. I mean, if you've got staff on reduced wages, everyone wants to get, they've all got their priorities. So, you want to try and get their wages back up to a level where they're comfortable. And then, the business, you want to be able to look to buy some new product and on. If everyone just goes in this discounting frenzy, it's just going to come off the bottom line because there's no reduction in costs. Yeah.
In some cases, it could be prolonging your misery, for want of a better word. Okay. I think we've had some great sort of insights over the course of this discussion. So thank you for being involved. I'm sort of hearing a lot around strength of relationships, the opportunity to innovate, the opportunity to slim down your business in terms of assets, but also operationally becoming more efficient and positioning your businesses to come out the other side. Undoubtedly, there's a storm to be weathered. It is tough times. Let's not be unrealistic about it. But if I could touch on one thing, and something that Erin's mentioned in her message, a video message, it was that now is the time for the industry to unite. The whole foundation of the HRA and this industry was around, we're stronger together, and now more than ever, it seems that's the case. And again, those relationships, so relationships with your colleagues, relationships with external advisors, external mentors, and also your relationships with competitors and relationship with the association, leveraging everything that you possibly can to get the support that you need and the knowledge and the wisdom that you can. So we've just had one late question come through. It's for Brett, and everyone can comment as well. So Brett, when do you think the next major event will be with corporate and GA crowds?
Look, we're talking to all of our clients, but no one knows. In Victoria, we don't know. AFL, AFL Grand Final is, there was talk on the radio the other day, AFL Grand Final will be the weekend of Cox Plate. AFL are hoping to have 30,000 people at the MCG, but that hasn't been approved, not that I'm aware, by government. I think the corporates, it's the odd thing about the economy is half of the economy is flying along and going really well, and then you've got half the economy that is just, has died. So there'll be, some big businesses, the banks and those things maybe don't want to be seen to be spending money, so they might not turn up at the big events. People might perceive it as a bad look to be going to a major event and being the major sponsor. Others will just say, well, we're on board and let's go. So horse racing in Victoria is still going ahead, as I think it is in the rest of the country. So Melbourne Cup, I think they'll be looking to do certainly things for their members, but the level of corporate hospitality is, there's probably 10 scenarios that all the events are working on, and until they can get some sort of indication from government, we just don't know. I mean, I would love to say, Cox Plate, MotoGP is not on this year. In Melbourne, supercars are running their events. The first few are without crowds, but we know Gold Coast is not going ahead this year. Newcastle is not going ahead because the street circuits, are really expensive for them to put on.
Yeah.
But it's that unknown about the whole corporate hospitality, and as we all know, to go and build a structure for 100 people. If social distancing is the 4 square metres, we can't go and build structures at 200 square metres for the same price.
Yeah.
The clients won't, they won't have any more money to go and pay extra. So it'll be a negotiation, and then ultimately it'll be depending on what our governments say.
Yeah. And it's an interesting point as well that, the large corporates that would typically sponsor and pay for the large corporate hospitality suites, you don't really know what their appetite is yet in terms of being visible, that they might have in place austerity measures because it might appear offensive for them to be blowing money on a lavish hospitality suite.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that happened with the GFC years ago. A lot of the banks were very reluctant, and the bigger business was very reluctant to be seen to be spending that money, or they would have facilities without branding. So, we haven't heard of anything, but, that's sort of what can happen. Whether that happens, who knows? But, you look at things like esports and sponsors, jumping on board with those sorts of things and getting their money in, putting their money in advertising in other ways. The market, the world is very different. But, look, I would hope this spring we would start to see some stuff trickle in. It'll only be a trickle at that. I don't think there'll be lots of big corporate hospitality facilities at the big event. Certainly Victoria, and I doubt the rest of the states will do it. Maybe autumn next year, Grand Prix, you would think Grand Prix would go ahead, but to what level? We'd hope there's something. But, for all we spoke about it earlier, for all the hirers, it's the country towns, it's those events, whether it's the Country Cup or the Country Show, it's all those things that are really good for country towns all around Australia. And we all rely on those sorts of work. So whether we're a hire out the back of South Australia or Western Australia or whatever, the local town has their local cup. It's up to everyone. We're not really the squeaky wheel in this industry. We're not on any lists. You don't see us anywhere for any sort of funding, or we're not getting anything. The best thing everyone can do is, get onto their local member, get onto their federal member, jump on board with the association, become that squeaky wheel and try and get something, because the politicians all love to get up at an event and hand out the winner's trophy. Or get up at the local show and hand it out. They all like to be seen there. Yeah. We need help to put those on, because it's good for the town, it's good for the community to get that sort of thing going. So I would say to everyone, become the squeaky wheel and, get to as many people as you can. Yeah. We just had another question. Sorry.
I just think for businesses like our size, the smaller ones where our market is private events, I think, the kicker for us is they can increase those numbers for indoor events as much as they like, but until they scrap that 4 square metre rule, like Brett said, people aren't going to be able to afford to pay for the size structures that they need to be compliant. And I think one of the, there was just a comment that came through about, what do we do? What are our obligations around if a client's putting 100 people in a 10 by 15 metre structure for an event, and any other day of the week, that's fine. But for this, they should have a structure that's, at least 2.5 times that size. Where do we stand? And legally, I have no idea.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I saw this comment come through, and we'll answer this one offline, but the shorter answer is that we have asked MST lawyers who provide legal advice to our members this exact question, and they have some feedback on this, so we will put that out there. So unfortunately, we have run out of time. Once again, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for making yourselves available. Undoubtedly it's a tough time, but once again, what comes through really strongly is the power of the relationships that you build with your customers and also within this industry, and that we are stronger together. If we're going to get through this, we want our members to be positioned in the best possible place to come out of this the other side and rebuild their businesses as quickly as possible. So thank you for your time. Thank you for everyone that's dialed in for this webinar as well. We hope that you found it useful. When you exit this, you'll be provided with a survey, and we'd encourage you to complete that survey. It'll give us more direction in terms of what's been working, what you'd like us to be doing. I would touch on this again, that we're doing a lot of behind the scenes work in lobbying, but I encourage what Brett said is we need to become that squeaky wheel. So we'd encourage all of our members to start lobbying their local politicians as well. We'll certainly be working really, really hard within the National Office, from the Board of Directors to the National Office to our state committees, all of our subcommittees, all of our working groups. Our number one focus is really around getting our members through this time as well. I'll wrap this up really quickly. So obviously there's some more HIRE20 webinars happening as well over the next few days. We'd encourage you to be part of it. Certainly we have a relaunch of young professionals, and a key part of that is mentoring. So if there are people within your organisation that would benefit from that, just dial in for the webinar and see what it's about. Similarly, Women in Hire is relaunching for the coming year as well. There's some other great webinars that we're putting on from a lot of our trusted advisors. I'd encourage all of our members to reach out to the National Office and to speak to our advisors. As always, if there's any questions from this or any other webinar that haven't been answered, come back to us. Each of our panelists have generously said that they're willing to talk directly with any of you as well. We are in this together. One of the other things I'll mention quickly is that some of our HIRE20 sponsors have released some virtual HIRE20 show specials. We will send that out to everyone in due course as well. So for people that might be looking to utilise some instant asset write-off or anything like that, there might be some opportunity for that as well. I'll just reiterate what Erin has said as well, is that we need to unite, and we just if there's anything that we be helping with, reach out and we'll do what we can. But then in the meantime, stay strong and stay safe. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.